The summer of 1518 descended upon Strasbourg like a suffocating shroud, a relentless, dry heat baking the cobblestones and clinging to the sweat-slick skin of its inhabitants. Dust, fine as flour, coated everything, stirred by the infrequent, languid breezes that offered little respite. The granaries were sparse, the harvests meager for the second consecutive year, and the air hung heavy not just with heat, but with a palpable tension, the gnawing fear of famine, the silent prayers for rain, and the whisperings of divine displeasure. Dr. Anton Kleist, a man of sharp intellect and even sharper skepticism, found little comfort in such pronouncements. He was a physician, trained in the burgeoning humanistic traditions, and he sought answers in the measurable world, not in the capricious whims of celestial powers. Yet, even his pragmatic mind struggled to reconcile what unfolded on the Rue de Fer, just a stone's throw from his modest dwelling. It began with Frau Troffea, a woman of no particular note, save for her husband's profession as a laborer and their 4 hungry children. On a Tuesday in mid-July, she simply stepped out of her small house and began to dance. Not a joyous jig or a celebratory reel, but a strange, frenetic, uncontrolled movement. Her arms flailed, her feet shuffled a relentless rhythm against the parched earth, her face a mask of grim determination and burgeoning exhaustion. She danced and she danced. Kleist, summoned by a frantic neighbor, found her hours later, her dress soaked with sweat, her hair plastered to her skull. Her eyes, wide and bloodshot, seemed to stare through him, fixed on some unseen horizon. "Frau Troffea," he called, attempting to grasp her arm, but she jerked away, her movements unbroken. He tried again, firmer this time, and felt a tremor that ran through her body, a frantic energy that defied her apparent exhaustion. She was not merely dancing, she was compelled. For 3 days and 3 nights, Frau Troffea danced. Sleep offered no solace, food no sustenance. She rejected both with violent shakes of her head, her feet never ceasing their macabre shuffle. By the 4th day, her body was a wreck, her muscles screaming, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Yet she continued, a horrifying testament to some invisible force. Kleist, baffled, could find no fever, no rash, no outward sign of disease. Her pulse was rapid, her breathing shallow, but these were symptoms of extreme exertion, not an underlying malady. Then others began to join. First, a young man, Hans, a baker's apprentice known for his melancholic disposition. He saw Frau Troffea dancing in the market square, paused, then, as if pulled by an invisible string, began to mimic her movements. Then another, a seamstress, her fingers still twitching from hours of intricate embroidery. Within a week, 7 more people were afflicted, their numbers growing daily. By the end of July, over 30 people were dancing, a grim procession forming in the streets, swaying and stomping under the unforgiving sun. Panic, a far more contagious affliction, began to grip Strasbourg. Priests spoke of demonic possession, of Saint Vitus's curse, a patron saint whose wrath was believed to manifest as uncontrollable dancing. The town council, initially bewildered, convened an urgent session. Their solution, born of desperation and a misguided interpretation of the popular belief, was to encourage the dancing. If it was a curse that needed to be danced out, then so be it. They cleared the grain market, erected stages, and hired pipers and drummers to provide a continuous, driving rhythm. Let them dance, the council decreed, until the malady passes. Kleist recoiled in horror. "This is madness," he argued before the council, his voice hoarse with frustration. "You are not curing them. You are feeding the very fire that consumes them. They need rest, quiet, succor, not more exertion." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The council, desperate for any answer, however illogical, clung to the old beliefs. The consequences were swift and brutal. The spectacle drew crowds, and with the relentless drumming and the sight of others writhing in the throes of the affliction, more people succumbed. The streets became a chaotic tableau of hundreds of dancers, their faces contorted in agony, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. Some collapsed, their hearts giving out under the strain. Others suffered strokes, their limbs seizing in grotesque parodies of movement. Kleist, moving through the throng, felt like a man caught in a waking nightmare. He saw a woman no older than 30, her eyes wide with terror, collapse and die. Her last breath a ragged gasp of pain. He watched as a young boy, barely 12, danced himself into a stupor, his small body convulsing before he too lay still. The death toll mounted. Kleist meticulously recorded each fatality, each new dancer, searching for a pattern. Was it the bread? He inspected the grain, tested samples for ergot, a fungus known to cause convulsive poisoning. The tests were inconclusive, leaning towards negative. Was it a specific water source? He questioned every new victim, tracing their movements, their diets. No common thread emerged. The dancers came from all walks of life, though the vast majority were the poor, the overworked, the hungry, those already teetering on the precipice of despair. He observed them closely. Their movements, though seemingly random, shared a compulsive quality. There was no joy, no pleasure, only a relentless, driven agitation. He spoke to those who had collapsed and survived, those whose bodies had simply given out before death claimed them. They described an overwhelming urge, an internal fire that commanded their limbs. Some spoke of vivid, disturbing visions, grotesque creatures, fiery demons, the vengeful spirit of Saint Vitus himself. All spoke of profound anxiety, a sense of dread that preceded the onset of the dancing. Kleist spent sleepless nights poring over ancient texts, searching for similar occurrences. He found scattered accounts, a dancing mania in the Rhineland decades ago, a similar outbreak in Aachen centuries prior. These were not unique, isolated incidents, but echoes of a deeper, more elusive malady. It was not a poison, he concluded. The symptoms didn't match. It was not a conventional disease. There was no fever, no contagion in the manner of plague. It was not, he grudgingly admitted, the work of demons, for the effect was too widespread, too human in its manifestation of suffering. The answer, he began to suspect, lay not in a single cause, but in the confluence of many. The suffocating heat, the gnawing hunger that hollowed out bellies and hope alike, the pervasive fear of divine wrath, stoked by a superstitious populace and a desperate clergy, the sheer, relentless stress of survival in a world teetering on the brink. These were not physical agents, but pressures on the mind, on the soul, that could manifest in terrifying physical ways. He presented his findings, a radical theory, to the council once more. "This is not a curse to be danced out," he stated, his voice ringing with renewed conviction. "It is a sickness of the spirit, born of despair and fear, exacerbated by exhaustion. The music, the spectacle, the very act of encouraging them, pushes them further into its grasp. We must stop the music. We must provide quiet, rest, nourishing food. We must give them hope, not a stage to dance themselves to death." This time, the mounting death toll had swayed the council. The spectacle had turned from a bizarre curiosity into a horrifying tragedy. The music was silenced. The stages were dismantled. The remaining dancers, exhausted and broken, were gently, but firmly, led to quiet hospitals and shrines, where they were given food, water, and above all, rest. The town, chastened and somber, retreated into a silence broken only by hushed prayers. Slowly, agonizingly, the dancing plague began to recede. The last dancer collapsed, not in death, but in a profound, dreamless sleep. Strasbourg breathed again, but the scars of that summer, of the hundreds who had danced themselves to death, would forever mark its memory. Kleist knew he had not found a cure in the traditional sense, but he had understood the insidious mechanism. The mind, under unbearable strain, could conjure its own terrifying reality, a dance of death. The truth is revealed. The story you have just read is based on a real, historical event known as the Dancing Plague of 1518, or the Strasbourg Dancing Mania. It is one of the most bizarre and intriguing medical mysteries in history. The historical event asterisk in July 1518, in Strasbourg, then part of the Holy Roman Empire, now France. A woman named Frau Trophia began to dance uncontrollably in the street. Within a week, several more people joined her, and by August, the number had swelled to between 50 and 400 individuals. These people danced continuously for days, some for weeks, seemingly unable to stop. They experienced profound exhaustion, dehydration, and often collapsed. with many eventually dying from heart attacks, strokes, or sheer physical depletion. The context asterisk the year 1518 was a time of immense hardship and distress in Strasbourg. The region had suffered from severe famine, widespread poverty, and a succession of diseases, including syphilis and leprosy. The populace was highly superstitious, often attributing misfortunes to divine wrath or the curses of saints, particularly Saint Vitus, who was believed to cause uncontrollable dancing. The social and economic conditions created an environment of extreme psychological stress and anxiety. The council's misguided response asterisk initially, the town council, believing it was a hot disease that needed to be danced out, exacerbated the problem. They cleared public spaces, erected stages, and even hired musicians to encourage the afflicted to dance, thinking this would be a cure. This decision proved catastrophic, as the continuous music and the spectacle of others dancing likely fueled the psychogenic effect, drawing more people into the mania and pushing the existing dancers to their limits. The scientific explanation, mass psychogenic illness. Modern historians and medical experts largely attribute the dancing plague of 1518 to a phenomenon called mass psychogenic illness, MPI, also known as mass hysteria. MPI is the rapid spread of illness signs and symptoms affecting multiple members of a group, all of which are believed to be caused by psychological stress rather than a specific pathogen or physical agent. In the case of Strasbourg, the perfect storm of factors included: 1. Extreme stress asterisk famine, disease, and poverty created immense psychological pressure and fear among the population. 2. Superstitious beliefs asterisk the prevailing belief in Saint Vitus's curse provided a cultural framework through which the distress could be expressed. People genuinely believed they were cursed and that dancing was the manifestation of that curse. 3. Social contagion asterisk the public nature of the dancing, coupled with the council's encouragement and the presence of music, created a powerful social feedback loop. The sight of others dancing, combined with their own internal anxieties, could trigger the same compulsive behavior in susceptible individuals. For physical exhaustion asterisk the continuous dancing led to severe physical and mental exhaustion, potentially causing hallucinations and further disorienting the afflicted, making it even harder for them to stop. The resolution asterisk the authorities eventually reversed their policy. They banned public dancing, dismantled the stages, and moved the remaining dancers to quieter, more secluded places, particularly to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus in Saverne. There, the dancers were treated with rest, prayer, and quiet reflection. The absence of the stimulating environment, coupled with the eventual exhaustion running its course, and perhaps the alleviation of some underlying stressors, led to the gradual cessation of the plague. The dancing plague of 1518 stands as a stark reminder of the profound and often terrifying ways in which the human mind and body can react to extreme stress, social contagion, and deeply held beliefs, even in the absence of a conventional physical disease.